Hey, good afternoon. Happy Monday afternoon. It is a beautiful sunny day. I am parked in a little forest preserve so I can record this video. Hope you're enjoying where you're enjoying this bright sunshine day. So, kids are out, spring break, and or at least the city school kids. So hopefully you're all buckled in and ready to listen in. We've gotten a lot of interest over the last couple of weeks as far as what we've been doing with how to build different uh, strategies and a plan of attacks for helping you to build legacies through investing in real estate. So we've talked about the different types of investing. We've talked about the legal structure, but we've also haven't talked about the most important thing is as far as when you're looking to whatever your plan of action is, whether it's 203K, whether it is house hacking, whether it is the bird strategy, we have to definitely talk about the most important thing in that, and that is the contracting part, the work that is needed to be done to accomplish those goals. And goodness gracious, you know, all the buzz that talks about general contracting and hearing the horror stories that come behind doing these different types of strategies that we run into contractors that may run away with your money, don't complete the job, drags on way longer than expected. And so I brought to you the leading expert as far as rehabbing comes into mind, where Ryan, my goodness, the Rotty Depot, the Rehab Depot, he is awesome. He gives it to you straight and real so that there's no games when it comes down to, there is no room for games, let's say this, right, Ryan, when it comes down to contracting. And
Nope.
we want to make sure that you found the right contractor. So he's going to go and expose all kinds of dirty traps and all that contractors do. So Ryan, thank you so much for joining me. I so appreciate you joining me. We just had you come back from Florida. You just did a great workshop. So he's a national guy. So he's helped flip that shit. He's
Right. That is right. Flip that shit, baby. That's it.
helped flip that shit for thousands of investors across the country. So I'm blessed and honored to have you on board, Ryan. Go ahead, I'll let you take the floor.
No, thank you for having me. Pleasure. You know, Wendy, I'm anything to do with helping out anybody in Chicago, especially you. I'm always here. The reality is I got my start here in Chicago. I will always finish Chicago. Chicago is who I am no matter where I go. You know, our second office for a long time was in Tampa, like the Florida market.
Right.
But the reality is we've done so many different types of rehabs, multifamily, single family, new construction development. And you've seen it all from a budgetary standpoint to a failure standpoint to a success standpoint to a novice to a seasoned veteran, everybody in between. So I'm here to help. Whatever you'd like to ask me, I will be more than happy to just hit it out of the park.
For sure. Awesome. Well, I mean, if you can provide us, I am going to rely on you as far as let's provide a couple of bullet points that you have, and we can certainly use this as a summary later on. If you have any type of quick resource guide that you can provide us, we would love to have that as well. But give us a couple of let's get 5 top tips for those who are watching us. What shall they do and pay attention to when it comes down to picking a contractor that's going to really help them get the job done? Or, hey, Ryan, you're available for hire? Let us know.
So here's the deal. You said you wanted 5 points, and ironically enough, there's 5 key rehab KPIs. You have to understand the business of what you're doing before you can understand what you're going to hire. Right? Think about that. It's like an employer that's going to go hire a staff member, but that individual has no idea what the SOPs are for that individual, so they're not going to find success because they can't be trained correctly. So think about the logic of what I'm saying. So the top KPIs in rehabbing,
Now, let's
right?
step back 1 second. Okay, Ryan, 1 second. Could we break down KPI and SOP so people that are watching may not
Sure.
know the terminologies?
So
Thank
you
you.
have key performance indicators in all businesses, which are where you measure success and failure. It's usually financial. Then you have SOPs, which are standard operating procedures, which basically outlines the requirements, the skill set, the job description, the roles and responsibilities.
Okay,
Make
awesome.
sense?
Thank you. Hmm.
Sure. So with that said, usually what often happens, and I've seen it personally over the years, is an investor will hire staff, they'll hire employees, and then they fire that project manager. And I'm like, well, who trained him? And they say, well, they did. I said, well, who trained you? They're like, nobody. I said, well, there's the problem. there you go through this over and over and over and over again. And you go to back in the day when meetups were hot and all those things, and there was like, I need a new contractor. It's like, no, you need more education. You need to learn contracting, and that might help you, level the playing field once and for all. But when you look at the KPIs of tracking a rehab division or a construction division, I don't care if you're a multifamily investor, single family, commercial, great, mixed use, going into new construction, you have to understand what those KPIs are to then identify the type of contractor you need, right? Not every contractor is equal. Not every contractor does the same amount of work. Not every contractor has a skill set to handle all that work. So when you look at the KPIs, for example, you have safety, you have sub inventory, you've got change orders, budgets, you got schedules and timeframes. When you look at all of that together, then you have to look at the contractor that you're choosing for specific projects. You have to look at the budget itself. How big, how large, how complex is this project, right? Because a $30,000 rehab is not the same as a $130,000 rehab. New construction is not the same as redevelopment. There's a difference. Redevelopment and development are two different worlds. So, I've seen over the years investors who just, they hop around over and over again. They don't know, they're so busy chasing the deal, which I respect, do what you got to do. You're chasing the deal, you're focusing on the acquisition, you're focusing on the funding, you're actually sleeping on construction. And that's where that you're going to lose your money right there. You're going to lose your whole ass on that. So what we've done is obviously try to level that playing field by providing that knowledge. So your 5 points really are the 5 KPIs, in my opinion, right? Track those, understand those, and then you'll understand who you need to hire, because not every contractor is equal.
Okay. So now, as far as a contractor's credentials, are there anything that that anybody that is looking to hire a GC, looking to what they should be looking for? Licensed and bonded.
Yep. Well, of course you want your license. You want a contractor to be licensed where applicable, right? Illinois is so damn corrupt that the Illinois state doesn't have a license, but Chicago does. And in these fools in Chicago aren't being tested, right? They're paying. So let's be realistic about what you're getting. You're getting riffraff. You're getting C-level contractors all day long, and that's what you're paying for. An A-level contractor is not going to come down to the rehab world because the margins are different. In the retail space, we can mark it up 45%. So for example, if I wanted to if you hired me to do your dream kitchen, I'm marking it up 45% because I can. It's the retail market. In rehabbing, the investor is usually taking it to retail. Therefore, they cannot afford to pay retail pricing. That's why it's an investment. So you pay for what you get. So you combine that logic with the fact that you have underqualified contractors, right? And I'm not suggesting that they're not all qualified. Of course they are, but it makes it that much more difficult for you as a novice or someone who's not familiar with contracting to locate that type of contractor. You have to understand contracting to know what you're asking. Does that make sense what I'm saying so far?
Yes, it does.
So when you realize you've already got one hand behind your back, you're handicapped already because you don't know contracting, then you never will know who to hire based on the need of a project, based on the state, based on code, based on what's out there. So you hire this 3-4 man garage band and you're stuck with riffraff. And then you want to bitch and complain that the quality's not there. Well, no shit. I mean, obviously you pay for what you get. If you're paying 15% on a markup to a rehab contractor because that's all you can afford in your budget, and you don't even understand why you can only afford that, then you're paying for what you get. So it's like the A doctor, B doctor, C doctor, the A attorney, B attorney, C attorney, right? There's different levels of guys that are good and not good. It's that simple. It could be based on experience. It could be based on education. It could be based on niche. But contracting is no different. You have different levels of contractors. You pay for what you get. So make peace with it now, investors.
Well, how do you? I mean, look, we've come across people who naturally have been referred by friends and family that did a contractor that did work on their home, and they were referred, and unfortunately it did not go successfully as well as it did with the family member that it did with the referring family member. So how does, again, one person, I mean, it's hard to determine how that's going to turn out, because how can it work for one person but it did not work for another? So how do they go about getting and picking the right contractor? Can they go to Angie's List, or is there and of course there's plenty of groups. The Renovation Room on Facebook is been a highly used site or group that, hey, I'm looking for XYZ to do a kitchen. Or even in the neighborhood groups, like, hey, I'm in Naperville or Homer Flossmoor. They're Chicagoland. They're looking for a Chicago handyman group. I mean, when you're in a Chicago handyman group, can you say that a qualified GC won't be in that group posting a their
Listen,
services?
bottom line is, and I think I captured your question, but
Mhm.
bottom line is there's a great bunch of great renovation rooms good, pack leaders is good. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there in Chicago that I have tremendous respect for, right? There's no doubt about that. But there's also a shit ton more that I have zero respect for. I know you're doing shit work. The reality is in construction and in rehab, you're only as good as your last rehab, right? It's like baseball, you're only as good as your last home run. And one of the things you have to understand, in my opinion, is that you're not always going to have consistency in construction because if investors understood what they're hiring, budgets are moving targets, schedules are moving targets. They're not definitive. That's why in construction you have projected and actual timeframes. You have projected start dates, actual start dates, projected end dates, actual end dates. You have Gantt charting. You've got draw management. There's a process to construction. Construction is its own pillar for a reason. This isn't a hobby. You've heard me say that at camps before, but I think investors they highly underestimate how complex construction can be if you don't have the correct team. Now, with that said, there are plenty of great contractors in the city of Chicago, plenty of contractors across the country, but they are all going to face challenges. We all do. Shit's going to happen, whether it be weather, whether it be guys, whether it be COVID, it could be anything. So, for example, one of the things I always tell investors to first do when they start looking at a property is I go, don't sleep on risk analysis. Start looking at your risk wheel. So you buy a property, let's just say in Auburn Gresham. All right. How old is that property? What's the time of year? What's the season that we're leaving and entering? What are the variables with that neighborhood? What type of crew will go there, won't go there? These are all part of your risk analysis. And if you're not preparing and planning for that, then when you go to construction, you're going to be in a nightmare because all you're doing now is being reactive. When you're reactive, it's costing you money. These things are going to happen regardless. I don't care who you are. I don't care how good you are, how great you say you are. Everybody goes through some trials and tribulations in rehabbing, even on the contracting side, because there are too many variables. Inspections, field inspections, city time, permitting time, architects, even real estate agents. Let's be frank. I mean, you know it like I know it. Just because you're a real estate agent doesn't mean you're successful. You got to earn that shit, just like anybody else. And contractors are no different. You're only as good as your last project, and consistency is a very difficult thing to keep in construction, if and only if you do not have a process. And that's what we've built a company around, is building the construction process. So if you make a mistake at step 9, you can always go back to step 6 and do it again. Most of the time, people make a mistake, they have no idea where to restart, and then the issues compound. And that's why I always say it starts with KPIs. Know what your KPIs are, know what your risks are, and then have a process to go through that.
Okay. So it sounds like what you're saying here, guys, and Ryan, confirm if I'm correct. You guys have to be more proactive than reactive as it comes down to planning what you're doing. Don't react, have your goals written down before you're meeting even with a contractor. Have an idea of what you're looking at is going to be in that price range. Looking at taking to an account the area, the weather, because hey, had you had purchased the property as many did during when we had the snowfall of 2021, and now you're in the middle of doing construction and now you can't do anything outdoor work. You got to keep that peace in mind. Can you do any work outside, or is that going to be part of the strategy that the seller is planning on not doing any work on the outside, and that's going to certainly be all
Exactly.
factors, right? So keep that piece in mind. So that's great. That's a great piece of advice, being proactive than reactive, because don't let
In my opinion, proactive is extremely important, but I'd be predictive. Create a process as an investor where you can be predictive. And then you can always really plan and say, it's going to happen. I know it's coming. I'm planning for it. Don't accidentally say, oh, I didn't think it was going to happen. If you think it's going to happen in construction, plan for it. There's so much risk in construction. So be predictive, then proactive, not reactive.
And then also be in control of your own process. Don't let the contractor control you, right?
Well, let me throw it to you this way on that note, right? Let me hit you with some fire on that. What happens now that you realize that you're hiring riffraff? All right, let's just take new construction, for example. You could have 25 to 30 different tradesmen that would build a home, a custom new home. You're asking 3 to 4 guys to basically touch almost every single trade in a full gut rehab, for example, or even a mid-level rehab. And you're asking 3 or 4 guys to bust out all that quality, but they're not the A-level guys, they're the C-level guys. So the investor thinks they're hiring a guy because they got the budget where they want the budget, which is stupid, right? That's naive. And then all of a sudden you're expecting the A-level quality. You're not going to get the A-level quality. And investors need to understand, they got to ask better questions, right? Ask your guys. I ask all the time. I'm like, out of this scope of work, what don't you like to do? What do you think your skill set, your weakest at? It's always drywall, right? I'm like, then I'm not going to give you the budget for drywall. I'm going to sub that out to a drywall company. Okay, no problem. You have to understand that the control is in your hands. And what's happening oftentimes is that investors are hiring contractors, and since the investor doesn't have a process, they fall victim to the contractor's process. And guess what? The contractor doesn't have a fucking process.
You are definitely right about that. I use a recent example with
You could beep that out anytime.
I mean, it's certainly true though, because at the end of the day, communication is also very key when it comes down to it. There's so many hands that could be playing in the actual renovation process of a home. I mean, I use the example of something that I had just closed recently, and my point of communication is truly the developer or the owner, right?
Mm-hmm.
But however, the developer owner also has their contractors and then their laborers. And so if the communication is only one way, hey, we're directing the information, I communicate to the seller and the seller communicates with the GC and to the laborer, but yet it's not going backwards. So when a walkthrough or an inspection is done, when indicators we thought that it was complete and yet it wasn't complete. I mean, I use an example where I was literally at the property and the job site with the developer and personally saw that the porta potty person was there to pick up the porta potty. And so when I set up the photographer, why is the porta potty still here? I'm dealing with pictures that have porta potties in the pictures, so come on. So but communication is so key, guys.
Yes.
Communication, control, all those things are definitely key as far as, I mean, and I'm taking it to a different level as far as being a realtor, but even so, it's not even just being a realtor, it's also you owning the home. You're in control, and also at the end of the day, your time is your money. And a lot of times these contractors don't have a sense of you, they don't know your timeline, so you have to communicate that, right? Ryan, wouldn't you agree? Communicate your timeline. This is your timeline. And I loved how I learned in your session where, hey, I have this timeline. I will give you a bonus if you fix it up early. But however, if you're delayed, it's going to cost you money now every day that's going to delay me, right? I love that.
Again, it comes down to just understanding how contracting works, right? And understanding the leverage that you actually have with just a little bit of education, like $1,000 a day rule. Fine. So let's take a $50,000 budget. You're looking at least 50 days, but there's going to be other variables. And if you understand those variables, you can actually ask questions. For example, let's just use 50 days, $50,000 mark, which is obviously on the low end. It's not going to happen, right? You're not going to do it in 50 days. But because at that level, you probably have a couple permits being pulled, right? Or you should, right? And then you have inspection time. So oftentimes you can call the local town or city or municipality that you're working in and say, hey, listen, how many days is the permitting process? Okay, then add that to the 50 days. Okay, how many days is the turnaround time when I call for rough inspection? Okay, then add that to the base 50 plus the 14 plus the, you know what I mean? If you start asking these questions, you don't need a contractor to do that for you. It's investors who take it upon themselves to do the right diligence and learn on their own. And that's how you start learning the game of contracting. That's why we always say learn construction, not how to frame. I mean, yeah, it'll help you, but learn the game of contracting. And if you understand the process of contracting, then you'll know better questions to ask. You'll know who to ask. You'll be able to do your own diligence and then trust the process, because you come to a guy like me who knows what he's talking about. You're already kind of like either scared, wary, don't trust me because you have a bad taste in your mouth and you're like, this guy's a fast talker, blah, blah, blah. That's not my problem. That's not my problem at all. It's no contractor's problem in Chicago. It's the investor who's hiring the contractor for a service. If that investor doesn't trust contractors, that's their fault. They need to learn the game. And if they get taken advantage of, guess what? It's also their fault. They need to learn the game. So I'm on both sides of the fence when it comes to this. The more you know, the better off you are. Level the playing field. I'm not saying contractors are out there trying to rip people off. Are there some? Sure, there are. But are things going to happen that are going to be financially detrimental to both parties? Yes, 100%. There's a lot of risk involved in this game. But what happens oftentimes is if there's no trust in the process, it's because there's lack of education in the process. So somebody's got to point fingers, and it's always the contractor taking the blame, which is bullshit, because it goes both ways. If you call me and you hire me for a job back in the day, right? I want to know that you as my client have a sense and some common sense as to what you're getting yourself into. For example, I would have clients that would do their very first flip and the rehab was like $250,000. And I'm like, you've never done a flip before. And your first flip's 250. I'm like, it's going to be a nightmare for you. And you're not going to trust anything we tell you because there's going to be change orders. Make peace with that. You're going to have inspection delays. Make peace with that. There's going to be surprises at that level because you're taking a 109-year-old bungalow, cutting the top off, building another addition on it. You don't think that 100-year-old home is going to have issues retaining something new? Of course it is. So this is where that common sense and logic comes in. But when they get hit with this extra, I need $4,500 for this and $5,500 for that, they're like, hey, I don't trust it. Well, hey, guess what? At the end of the day, it's not my project. It's yours.
I think she's frozen.
She's like moving, but I think she's muted too.
A complete basement. Someone says, "Oh yeah, I can do this for $20,000." Well, most complete finished basements don't just cost $20,000. Okay,
No.
If you're adding a bathroom, you're adding a kitchen. I mean, not a kitchen, another bedroom. Are you framing up walls? I mean, if it's a completely not empty shell, but an unfinished basement, 20,000 is not a realistic number. So someone's telling you 20,000 only to get the job, and then you turn around and realize that 20,000 is going to be a very, very, very bare minimum basement. You got, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but to some degree, you have no one to blame but yourself, guys, at that point, because the seller is only going to, the contractor is going to only abide by what your budget is. And are you going to get what you pay for? And 20
Well, you know what?
is not going to get you finished.
Even a step further than that, investors are taught not to share a budget. Do you have time to not share a budget? No, you don't, because you put a project under contract. Okay, you've got 30 days to close, average. Do you think you have enough time to plan for anything? No, absolutely not. Not in construction. You need as much time as possible to plan, review, adjust, plan, review, revise. That's a process in construction. And oftentimes investors they want to rush this process. You can't rush this process. And again, it comes down to understanding what you're trying to accomplish and what those variables look like. And there's a lot of variables. That's why in our academy and at our camps, we're always teaching you like the step-by-step things like, did you open this door and look at that? Did you unveil this? Did you open this? And people are shocked because if you don't open this door and see what's behind it, it's going to affect everything else. And it's going to compound it to a point where you're going to have problems all across the board. And, you and your contractor are going to have issues. And it will start with lack of trust.
Mm-hmm. So as far as an investor comes in into looking at purchasing a property, like you were talking about, first project and it's $250,000, would you advise an investor, if they're completely doing a gut rehab, should they, in your opinion, hire an inspector to do an inspection, in your opinion?
It's not a bad idea. When we were in the camp in Florida last week, I was telling people, I said, there's ways of doing it. And it's actually why we do some of this, where we charge $250 and I'll say, just call us. We'll come give you a bid. We're not doing the work, but we'll give you an objective bid. And then you can compare apples to apples when you're talking to 5 other contractors. That's a necessary need in the industry. That's why we also created project management camps, because that's a necessary need in the industry. It's not something we decided to just do. We saw that we learned firsthand it's necessary. So yes, I think if you have inspectors that you trust who know construction, not just code, then yeah, have them walk a property with you, create your scope of work, walk it with them and say, hey man, what do you think? And I would sit in basements and I would ask all about furnaces, get your buddies who know that, who are licensed, and say, can you break down the furnace for me? Like, what am I looking at? So I know it when I'm walking with a contractor, I have some sense. But that's what we do. We provide these bids all across the board on purpose. So it's like, all right, well, here's your bid. Good luck. But at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. To answer your question, you need somebody or something that's going to help you as you grow, because no one's going to come into this game. Let me put it this way. After like 300 flips, I still didn't think I knew what I was doing. Right. I really didn't. I was like, shit, every single job's different. Every single project, every single crew, every single sub, every single budget, every single problem. So that's what I'm just for perspective, right? It doesn't matter if you've done 2 and you think you're great, dude, you got to do so many at
Well, doesn't always it's always evolving, right? I mean, back in the day, kitchen cabinet. I mean, back in the day, 10 years ago, you didn't see the glass tile. Now glass tiles everywhere. It's the norm, right? Versus it's always changing. What some new technologies or new ways to do installing whatever it is. So it's
Right.
always evolving. So you're never going to know everything at the end of the day,
That's
right? So like
correct.
you said, you get 300, and that's actually a great comment that you made. At the end of the day, you're always learning, right? So you're
Still
always
learning.
learning and still learning. You got it. You're still learning, and so we. At the end of the day, we're going to be competitive. We're offering a competitive edge because we're always learning and we're always doing what we got to do to help the client at the end. So, any thoughts that come to mind? Any questions as I'm asking or we're talking about this continued topic, Ryan, in your head?
Any part, tons. This I eat and sleep this shit, man. It's tons. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, some of the just quickest advice I can give anybody, who's newer, fresher, or maybe still in their beginning, they've done maybe a handful of projects or two handfuls full of projects. Because in my opinion, if you've done less than 20 deals, you're a rookie. That's just me. All right. And even if you've done, and that's also during a time period, if you've done 20 over 5 years, you're not learning anything. Right. But if you've done 20 in a year, now you're like, this is what I do. This is all I do. Right. It's very different. It's the same difference as some of those high level investors who are always chasing the deal. That's all they're doing is putting out contracts. Well, they're going to master that process very quickly. Right. That's why construction has to be redundant and practiced. It has to be experienced. You can't learn construction in 2 days. I can go to a wholesale webinar and learn that easily. Right. But you can't learn construction in 2 days. It takes years of experience of being in the trenches, understand what you think you're looking at. And I always say that construction is very much like medicine, right? You have a patient on the surgical bed, you run into an issue. You can't just say, oh, let me come back tomorrow and figure this out. No, that's why you have a team. You guys have to figure out the problem and get it done.
Yeah.
And this business, it'll harden you. It'll give you a backbone, right? Obviously, everybody knows my demeanor. Everybody knows my personality. I'm a fun guy. I keep it real. But the reality is I have a backbone for this business. This is what I do. And I know that that's what's necessary in leadership, because when you're in this position as an investor, you're the leader, whether you like it or not. So you better lead. You're going to get eaten alive if you don't.
Okay. Awesome. Great. Let's see if we have any questions here. Let's see. Dominique, but it is likely a contractor will charge more for the area they have to go to. What do you think about that, Ryan?
Repeat that one more time.
Do you think a contractor would charge more if they have to go to a certain area?
Sure. Right. If there's a reason, if it's maybe more dangerous, if it's further away than their current jobs, if it's okay, for example, I mean, it doesn't have to even revolve around safety. It could be traffic. If I've got a penthouse that we're doing downtown, I know parking is going to be a nightmare. Material deliveries to a condominium in HOA is going to be a nightmare versus the suburban house. So yes, 100%.
Okay. And that, Dominique, that's definitely a great question to ask. And like Ryan says, it certainly determines that, because contractors, I mean, there are contractors who I've heard people get hired and they're about an hour and a half away. They're going to charge for that time they're going to be away from home, right? So you got to keep that piece in mind. Let's see, what's the next question? Shoot, I'm sorry. As I'm trying to read these questions, the whole different way I'm set up from going across the way. Can you see the question, Ryan, from where you're at? Let's see.
Yeah, I see a couple of questions. I see one. What is the conversation like with the contractor to talk to their previous customers to talk about their accomplishments, delays, quality issues? So what is the conversation like? So there's nothing wrong with asking those questions, right? It's logical. Your delivery is everything, but let me tell you something about leadership. It's all about confidence, right? So if you are shaky asking these questions, you're going to get shaky answers. We are an informal business in terms of where a lot of our clients, investors, come from the 9-to-5 culture, the corporate world, if you will. And there's a way of speaking and a way of writing emails and a way of communicating. Great. Well, when you come to the contracting world, it is what it is. So, we're constantly moving fast. We've got a lot going on. We've got to go place A to B to C. Ask your questions. Go ahead, fire away. there's nothing wrong with asking about previous work. There's nothing wrong with asking for referrals at all. Do it, ask it.
Speaking of previous work, how does a contractor like yourself feel about a contractor that was on the project and then disappeared, and now you have to come in behind it? What because I'm sure there's people watching who's going through this right now or catching the replay and going through this. What would your suggestion be as a contractor coming in behind someone that never finished a job?
So to answer your question, no contractor wants to come in and finish for somebody else, first and foremost. 2, there is a process of termination. 3, that you will be paying 20% extra to remand that job. 4, make peace with it.
Okay. So
That's going to happen. But yes, contractors do not want to pick up for other contractors. I mean, think about the obvious. I don't know what this guy was thinking. I really don't know how far he was taking it. I've got to go do some investigating to figure out where we're at. I don't really know if your remaining budget's going to be enough, and usually it's not, right? Because more than likely the investor didn't manage the draws in the first place, which helped them get into this situation. I mean, let's look at the variables, right? It's not just the contractor that put them in that position, right? It's the lack of education the investor had on managing the money, understanding progress, understanding quality control.
So basically, as an investor, what I'm hearing is that, hey, you have to also maybe go into one of Ryan's camps to understand as an investor, and that's what I did a couple years, 2 years ago before COVID. I went to one of those camps with Ryan, and just understanding what, as a high level, as an investor, what to do. And then again, you have to be educated so that you don't just rely on just the expertise of the general contractor. If you do that, it's game over to some degree, right, Ryan? Because now you let all the control with this contractor be taken out of your hands and put into them. And because they're trusting in the fact that you're not knowledgeable at all. And so then they're going to tell you anything you may need to hear. But then once they got you in, now they're going to tell you, oh, this needs to be done and this needs to be done. And that's not where you want to be. You want to be in control. So join one of the camps that Ryan has. And he has virtual, live, you name it. And we'll be hosting some as well together in conjunction so that you can, again, take control over this entire process and be able to create some serious wealth in investing in real estate. Ryan.
I appreciate that. But at the same token, we've had number of people that attend our camps, and they'll learn the process for one flip and then they won't continue it. This is work, right? You signed up to work, right? You're an investor, which means you are a project manager by default. So this is a consistent evolution of yourself in this industry, just like acquisitions would be, just like eyeballing a property, just like managing money. These are arts that they need practice. They need to be cultivated and developed over time, not overnight. So we teach everything you need to teach at various stages, whether it be the online academy or the boot camps, but you have to continue still learning and evolving with that. And, that's the key that I see all of my high level clients that are doing 200 flips a year, 300 flips a year. They've got systems and processes locked in. They got CRM systems electronically. They communicate and collaborate via Moxtra, Asana, Builder-Trend, all these different things. This is high level thinking. And I would encourage any investor listening, where do you want to be with this? Are you investing for a couple bucks? You just want to do a couple flips a year to be another avenue of revenue stream, which is great. There's no right or wrong answer. Point is, what's your 3 and 5 year plan here? Because that's how you build your business in that direction. What's your 3 and 5 year plan? If you don't have one, and you're listening to what I'm saying, you're going to get eaten alive. Don't rehab unless you learn how to rehab.
Okay. Well, I mean, with anything, you have to be able to learn to crawl before you walk, before you can run, and before you can, take that sprint and run a marathon, guys. So, Ryan, as far as, treating it like a business, I mean, certainly a lot of people have gotten their start as far as being an investor on their one project, maybe one project a year, 2 projects a year. And that's great where you started, but you're talking about treating it like a business. They may not be able to have those resources or think to do that. So is there a tiered up system or suggestion that they can? I mean,
the biggest key to that is to learn the production phase of construction, which is literally setting up the job. If you can learn how to set up the job, it's heavily administrative. It's heavily about meeting with people and establishing rapport. It's heavily about analysis. It's heavily about predictive analysis, risk analysis, financial analysis. If you go through the production phase of setting up any rehab, that alone is going to teach you light years about, wow, where am I at in my knowledge base? Because you can't go into project management. It's not going to happen because you go to project management, you're going to struggle. I mean, when you get to actual construction, you're going to struggle of everything you didn't plan for. And that's what rehabbing is happening all across the city, all across the country, is you have investors in the hole right now who didn't plan for the construction project in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Very true. What else? Looks like there's another question. What's that next question? Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm managing from my phone here, Ryan.
Let me see what I got. It says, so in regards to the 250,000, would a 20-year-old home be better versus an 100-year-old home? Yeah, at the end of the day, the house is like a patient, right? It's sick. It's going to tell you what it needs. I don't think the age of the house really is going to matter. I mean, especially in Chicago. I think if you look at properties in general, in my experience, Southside homes had the same Southside problems. And when you start doing a handful, you start realizing the foundations are always going to be a problem. You start realizing the basements are always going to flood. You're going to realize there's always mold, and you start picking up on these traits. And again, through experience, you get instinct. And that's one of the biggest things I always try to say is you need to learn instinct. That's the big key here. So my opinion, no, the age of a house doesn't really matter because you're still going to remodel or renovate it.
Especially homes built 100 years ago were actually, with all due respect, built to last longer than the ones that are built 20 years ago, potentially. I mean, I've seen a lot of 10-year homes having foundation issues already, but yet the ones that are built 100 years ago may not have those problems. Now, of course, due to age, you might have had a little bit more wear and tear, mismanagement, or certainly contribute to that, right? But don't look at per se the age of the home, but would you be also, Ryan, talk about like even the key is don't always focus on the price of the property, because if everyone is looking at trying to buy that cheap property that's $10,000 or $50,000 versus buying that $150,000 home, the reality is this: that $10,000 or $50,000 home, you may need to put over $100,000 in work at $150,000 potentially, but yet on that $150,000 home, you might just need to put $20,000, $30,000, right? And so that's way less work, way less time for a quicker turnaround and profit margin. Right, Ryan?
I agree. I mean, I used to look at properties and I'd be able to price them in my head and say, this type of property is $65,000 in rehab all day. This type of property is $85,000 in rehab all day. This one's $150,000 all day, based on the same complexities that the building has or the age of the building. So again, just strictly through experience of walking these properties over and over and over again, you're able to at least come up with a ballpark that will help you reasonably make an offer.
Anything else, Ryan? Right off the top of my head right now.
Juan asked the question. Juan said, should you get multiple bids or create your own budget and see who is willing to deliver at that price? 100% you should create your own budget. 100% you should have your own scope of work. It's not about having them deliver at that price point, because what if your budget's wrong and they deliver at that price point? What does it matter, right? You're gonna have change orders. The idea is to collaborate with your general contractor. For example, in step one of production, you're doing your pre-walk. That's when you go to the property and you've got your preliminary scope of work. Preliminary scope of work. It's not final. Investors need to learn that you're using the contractor to help you finalize both your budget and your scope of work by asking great questions. Establish rapport early on. You're going to date this fool, right, for 2-3 months. You'll know on the moment you meet this person if you can work with this person. So ask them better questions. Things like, tuck pointing, for example. Nobody knows how much tuck pointing a building needs. So you know what? Walk the contractor to those problem areas. Have them kind of help you adjust, like, how much tuck pointing do I absolutely need? And then adjust the budget together. And this is why I always say it's okay to share your budget. I'm not saying give them the exact number. Give them the ballpark of where you'd like to be so we can see if we can achieve that together. You'd be surprised how many contractors are more than willing to help you navigate that and say, no, actually, I'm glad you told me it's 65, because then we're not doing a new deck, right? Unless we absolutely have to, but we're not doing a new deck. Let's power wash it and stain it. There's a difference there. And when you can establish that rapport and a contractor can start giving you transparency then you start building trust from day one, and they will then help you finalize that scope of work. The second half of your question about the bidding, if you're new to the game, get 3 bids. If you're not new to the game, learn to award contracts. I award contracts. I don't wait for bids.
Okay.
Meaning I bid it myself, and then I break it up with how I'm going to sub it out. If that makes sense, because I control the budget. I want to control the budget and control the finishes.
Makes sense for sure. I mean, that's what
If you don't learn how to control the budget, that's why every single thing gets marked up on you, and you'll never be able to hit your budget because it's going to get marked up on. That's standard procedure in construction. So if you learn where those markups are at, and you learn how to control those markups, which means you control half the budget, which means you got to learn how to do that. That's where you're going to find tremendous success when you're just awarding contracts, not waiting for bids. I mean, let's be realistic. We walk a house today, Wendy. You're like, okay, Ryan, can you give me a bid? Yeah, sure. You know what? I'm busy. Let me get you a bid by, today's what, Monday? I'll get you a bid by Friday. 1 week goes by. Friday comes around. I didn't get you the bid. I'm busy. You start calling me Friday, Saturday. You're like, hey, did you get that bid? I don't answer your phone all weekend because it's A, the weekend, B, I'm busy. Come Monday, I answer your call. I said, oh, no, I'll send it to you today. I end up sending it to you today. I'm 15, 20,000 over budget, right? Now you're calling me back saying if we can negotiate it. 2 or 3 days goes by before we can talk about that. Turns out I can't move. You just lost 2 weeks. That's my point. You don't have 2 weeks. You have 30 days to close.
Yes.
You don't have 2 weeks. That's why you have to learn about financial management on construction money. Contractors are probably listening to this going, this guy's telling everything. That's how it works.
Well, where he's here focused on you and making sure that you guys are getting the right contractor and equipped with the right information so you can move forward. So we can, when we find you that property is going to make sense for you, right? Because we don't have the luxury of 2 weeks of time to wait for that estimate to come through. You need that right away because investors are going to ask me, hey, what's the ARV? What's the aftermarket resale value once we put this amount of work into it? We need to make sure that, hey, the cost of acquisition plus the cost of the repairs equals this amount of money, and that there's a nice budget factored in as far as a profit margin for that investor for it to make it worthwhile for them, because a $15,000 return is not going to be sufficient for an investor. However, we're talking about the flip side. When we started this series, we talked about 2 or 3K as a homeowner occupant. You're not having to worry so much about the equity. You're going to have equity built in automatically because you bought a home at a price, but by the sheer fact that you're doing the improvements is giving you increased equity. Okay. And so then you're walking into your home with some equity. And as you continue to live in it over the years, you're building more equity as more and more homes in your neighborhood that you buy into is selling for a higher price. Now, Ryan, a question that came to mind as you were talking about GCs and subbing out the other jobs and you have a control over it. As an investor, can we ask their question? I think I know the answer, but I'm going to let you answer it. As a contractor that has subs, can I ask you as a GC, who are your subs? Just as a quick.
Yep. I think she muted herself again. Wendy, I think you muted yourself.
Sorry, too many coming through. So would the GC provide that list of subs to an investor asking?
Yes. So in your contract, but here's the deal. Like I keep saying, the investor should be controlling everything, right? So if you call me, I'd be expecting a contract from you, right? So in your contract, you have a sub list where I'm supposed to provide my subs. Therefore, there's one of 2 ways to do this. I mean, one of 2 reasons why it's important. One, you want to know who the subs are so to make sure they get paid. And 2, you want to make sure that if I don't have a specific sub, you're going to have to get that sub. All right. So it really comes down to communication. So really, in my opinion, yes, ask that question, but you're providing that in your contract documents. In our contract documents, for example, our contract itself is 2.5 pages long. Our contract package is 14, 15 pages long. Right? You have to understand that this is construction. So he who presents the contract is in control. We all know the game of business, but there is a win-win in that equation. So my point is, if you are providing enough information up front to your contractor, you'll have less issues if they know exactly how you operate, what your expectations are, how they're going to get paid, when they're going to get paid, why they're going to get paid, time frame, start dates, end dates, who's buying materials, who's not, who's responsible for what. It's bigger than just, hey, okay, we agreed to 55,000. Let me put it to you this way. This is why controlling the budget is so important. It makes me laugh. You have a $100,000 budget, right? You go out and you get 3 bids. You got one guy that comes in at, I don't know, 86. Another guy comes in at 105. Another guy comes in at 125. Right? Everybody taught you don't go for the guy who's the lowest budget. Okay, so you already throw him away. So you're at 105. You're probably going to take that because of the law of averages. You already lost because A, you're already over your budget, and B, you don't know why. So you didn't plan for your contingency that's going to be necessary at the $100,000 mark. You didn't plan for the risk analysis, which is going to happen at the $100,000 mark. You didn't plan for all the deadlines and missed deadlines because of draws being poorly managed that are going to happen at the $100,000 mark, plus 10,000 other things. That's why it's extremely important to understand what you're getting into.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I mean, I was asking a simple question about with the subcontractors, because sometimes people are a little leery, because I was just having a conversation with one of my investors who is basically the GC himself as well, and he has his subs, and he shared his story with me as far as, okay, people asking him, hey, who do you have for a roofer? And then they just completely X'd out that individual as the GC and just wanted the information of the sub. That's why I was asking you as in your practice, what happens. So you guys have heard this as far as what Ryan is saying, as far as even being able to understand the type of a type of contractor you have, whether A level or B level or C level. You're dealing with somebody who has a contract. Does the individual you work with who's contracting have a contract that they're giving you as well, because they want to show you that they're business oriented and they mean business at the end of the day, versus someone that's just giving you an estimate? They're running it so that, again, they're able to give you the cost breakdown, but again, what are the contingencies? Are there any expectations? Have they given you any form of a contract that can help spell out the difference between a C-level contractor versus an A-level contractor?
I agree. In that event, if a contractor presents their contract, there's nothing wrong with that at all, right? We used to do it all the time. What it would come down to is that we'd have to talk and make sure that we're speaking the same language and that our contracts are equal, and that's fine. It's a very professional thing to have a contract from a contractor, because it shows you that they're professionals. Absolutely. If they're providing their own invoice, fantastic. If they have their own CRM system that they'd prefer you to jump into, we did. I used to have all my clients jump into my system. They were more than happy to do it because they didn't have one. So absolutely, it's very professional to do that. Just make sure it's a win-win. Read their contract like the way that you expect them to read yours, and make sure that the verbiage and the lingo and the expectations and all the numbers match.
Okay. And I think there was one more question about virtual staging or something, or I'm sorry, virtual consultation.
Ryan, do you do virtual walkthroughs? Yes, we do virtual walkthroughs. We do it through our CRM portal. So if that's something you're interested in, just send me an email. And then obviously we'll send you a password, and you can upload any of your projects anywhere across the country and the city, and I can look at them virtually and give you my opinion.
Awesome. All right. Well, we've gotten a lot of information from you, Ryan. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
the knowledge you provided. You guys, those of you watching, you've got the real deal. Okay. The man himself.
I've done one or two.
I'm sorry, one or two what?
Only flips. I've only done about one or two. I'm a clubhouse guru now. I did one or two flips. I think I know what I'm talking about.
You're funny. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, right? There are those who will say, hey, after one or two flips, I'm the expert. And so come and pay me so I can tell you what to do. So
man, I know guys who have done 50 flips, and that's a nice number. And they think they're the greatest coach in the world. And I said, brother, you haven't seen shit yet. Keep it real.
Keeping it real. And certainly Ryan does. I will have to keep calling you Keeping It Real, Ryan. Ryan, please provide your contact information. We'll also type it at the bottom of the Zoom here. I mean, the bottom of the live.
So my email is easy, ryan@therehabdepot.com. Obviously, therehabdepot.com is the website. You can catch me on Instagram at Rotty, the legendary flipper. And my cell, you on my cell? You're lucky to have my cell, 847-899-5713. I won't repeat it.
That is awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Please
You
share
got it.
also for if you want to share about your camps that's coming into Chicago, we'll have
Yeah. I'm
some more
actually doing
information.
a virtual camp for the first time May 1st. So in a month, I'm going to do one day camp on Saturday, May 1st from I think 10 to 4. We're going to talk about construction, how to price bathrooms and build them, how to price kitchens and build them, contractor terminology, construction terminology. We're going to talk about the process of install and what your average rehabs look like. So we're not going to talk about business. We're not going to talk about process or systems. We're not going to talk about project management. We're going to talk about construction. So it's $199. Log in, join us on Zoom. It'll be a one-day event. We've never done it before, so I imagine it's going to be a big deal. And we just started marketing this morning.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. As always, guys, you are watching information that we provide to you because we want to make sure that you succeed in anything you want to do as far as building your legacy through real estate investments. Okay, guys. So we're going to have some more information about the virtual a workshop that Ryan's hosting. So we'll come and continue to watch that out. We might even have some type of opportunity for you. So we'll talk about that, Ryan, a little bit. As far as anybody else, if you have any questions, feel free to inbox me or Ryan, and we will be here to provide all the answers that you have regarding the process. Okay. When all that being said, Ryan, thank you so much. I know your time is valuable and I appreciate your friendship and your
Sure. Thank you.
candor as it comes down to it. You're gonna give it to us real. There's no BS here, guys. This
Well,
is the real.
the one thing I always tell everybody is like, think of me as your contractor. If you can believe in me, talk with me, discuss with me, and work with me, then you can work with anybody. Because this is the alpha of contracting is right here. This, if you could deal with this, you could deal with anybody. So it's kind of like practice.
Okay.
Always coaching.
Always coaching and always be coachable, guys. So,
Yeah.
all right, we are at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Ryan. Again,
You're
we will
welcome.
be shortly, and we will be bringing to you potentially other opportunities that come down to featuring Ryan live. So thank you so much again and have a great day. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Have a beautiful day. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Ryan. Hold on
You're welcome.
stay on 1 second, Ryan.
Sure.